Welcome to week 4 of playing Minecraft every day for a year. We cover everything from end busting to lovely tower builds to zombifying villagers, and we start over at day 22.
I got started today by aiming to finish up the roof that I was working on at the end of yesterday. I was able to get the sloped part finished pretty quickly, using up the spruce steps I had crafted for the purpose. I then went to get some birch wood so I can fill in the triangular gap between the roof and the walls with a slightly different coloured wood to add some variation or something? I don't know. Now, it's definitely time to get started working on the big round build to go around the iron farm. By far the ugliest farm, and is in desperate need of some decoration. I measured out and accurately built a circle around the base of the farm so I could use it as a template to build the rest of the tower up. After making the first circle, I needed to expand the hill it is on a little bit, so I gathered some dirt and got to work. It was a fairly quick job, and then I could get back to working on the tower itself. I'm going to build the tower up out of several sections, slowly tapering in when each new section starts. The first layer is made out of cobblestone and gravel, a very textured, slightly darker look. As the tower goes higher, I'm going to use lighter and lighter blocks, hopefully creating a pleasing gradient. I then took a moment to feed my frogs to get them to breed, to make even more extra frogs before going and doing a bit of mining to stock up for when I continue building tomorrow. Another big bad bootylicious building day. On continuing the build of the tower around the iron farm, I started the second section. I built inwards a block and then proceeded upwards with a mixture of stone and andesite. Once I finished the second layer, I needed to go collect some blocks for the third layer. So first I took some stone blocks over to the super smelter to make lots of smooth stone, and then I found a patch of diorite on the surface near my base, and I dug it all out. On returning to the tower, I noticed that an iron golem had spawned on the top, because the exposed blocks count as places that they can spawn on. So I went and made some slabs out of stone and diorite and placed them on top of the second layer, because bottom slabs are not spawnable. By now, I had been thinking about the roof and what I might make it out of. I decided on using copper blocks and cut copper blocks to add an interesting bit of colour to the build. I needed them to oxidise first, so I placed them outside around my base, leaving a bit of space between each block to make sure that the process can happen as quickly as possible. Then, back to the tower, it's time once again to go inwards and upwards, using the diorite and smooth stone block to continue up with the third section. As I went up, I used less smooth stone, so that just the diorite will look lighter as the tower got taller. Once at the top of the height I wanted, I used some spruce planks to make a rooftop platform, and then I designed a rounded top to support the roof for when the copper blocks have oxidised and I'm able to place it. Back live on twitch.tv/Mollytron, and whilst waiting for the copper blocks to turn blue, I decided to make a little build on the back of my house. I'm making a nicely decorated spot for my cows to live, as I rarely need to breed them and kill them anymore, so I might as well make a nice space for them to live in. I got started by tidying up the ground around the back of my nice new house, mostly filling in holes with dirt and making sure there is plenty of space for the build. I started using oak plank slabs for the roof to make a gentle slope down from the back of the house, with oak logs supporting the corners. I added some spruce fence and then came up with a genius idea of using a birch fence gate so that it will stand out and be easy to use. Now to actually do some decorating. I started with a water trough kind of design made out of cauldrons with spruce trapdoors standing up around them. To finish, I of course put some water in the cauldrons. Next, I added some hay bales to the centre of the pen as a food source. Then I wanted to add some leaf blocks around to make a kind of bush thing that's a bit overgrown, so I went to gather a bit of a variety of leaves. Whilst out getting the leaves, I actually found an azalea tree, which has some nice decorated leaves and also a bunch of rooted dirt blocks underneath it. So I grabbed some, as I wanted to mess up the ground a bit, because that's what would happen with a bunch of cows walking around in a small pen. I put together a basic little bush growing over the back corner of the fence and then changed some of the ground blocks to rooted dirt. I didn't want to add in too much more detail because it's a small space and it's going to be filled with cows. Speaking of, it's now time to move the cows in, which went absolutely fine and wasn't frustrating at all. Oh no, they're all escaping. So after filling in the escape routes created by the bush being there, I decided to go explore the nether and see if I could find some interesting loot in a bastion or something. After flying around for a while, I eventually found one, and so very carefully started working my way through. I picked off the piglin brutes and the regular piglins, while looting the occasional chests, slowly pushing further and further into the dangerous ruined structure. I made my way to the bottom of the treasure room, where the best loot can be found in a couple of chests surrounded by gold blocks. After gathering the gold, I was looting the first chest when a big magma cube jumped up and into my view, so I quickly bashed it to knock it away, and it responded by bouncing me into the lava, quickly killing me in a matter of seconds. and because I was in the lava, literally all of my gear burned up and was unrecoverable. Big sad. Of course, this means tomorrow I'm going to need to get more gear, and because I only had one elytra, I'm going to have to go end busting. The next day on the back of a big loss can be a slow and a lonesome thing. Not for me. I grabbed my spare gear and got to getting some enchantments on things like a bow and a decent sword for battling the many shulkers I would be facing off with very soon. I did a bunch of training with villagers for the stuff from my farms to get plenty of levels for enchanting, and simply wasn't wasting any time. I gathered everything I would need for my trip to the end. I brought over 10 stacks of blocks for bridging, as well as enchanted books, an anvil, and rockets for when I get an elytra. Whilst on my way, I grabbed a quick log so I could make a crafting bench, which will come in useful once I have a few things from the end. Off into the stronghold and through the portal to the end again. After a good 20 minutes of bridging, running, and purling across the end islands, I finally got to an end city with a ship outside. I made my way up through the city, killing shulkers and gathering treasure as I went. I eventually got to a room near the ship, broke through the wall and bridged across. Elytra finally in hand, I quickly made sure to enchant it, and then I used the chests in the room with some shulker shells I had gathered so far to make some shulker boxes, so I could keep on end busting. Now end busting is the task of flying from end city to end city, killing shulkers and gathering the loot from the chests you can find at the top of each city. You can find a decent amount of highly enchanted diamond gear this way, a great starting point for building up an arsenal of spare gear for the eager adventurer, much like myself, who sometimes finds themselves in sticky situations. I did this for about an hour in real time, and only returned home because I was running low on food, so my healing would not work for much longer. Once home, I organised all of my new fantastic loot into some separate chests off to the side. There was a treasure box with lots of diamonds, iron, gold, some emeralds, and my elytra. Once I organised my diamond armour, I found I had enough to make 5 or 6 new sets, with a bunch of spare pieces. Of course, some of the items you get have a curse, so I always put those to the side so I don't accidentally use them. I got a bunch of nice diamond picks, swords and shovels with some iron tools too. And finally, just a couple of rows of iron armour. All in all, a fantastic haul. New day, new farm. Comment below your guess for what farm I'm building from these few clues. First up, I'm going to need a whole bunch of leaves. I gathered a bunch of oak leaves with the shears I had lying around, but was going to need some more, so I quickly used up some XP levels on enchanting a diamond hoe so I could quickly get a bunch of stacks of leaves, leaving a bunch of naked trees lying around that I probably won't ever get back to. With a shulker box full of leaf blocks, I gathered some more things that I will be needing in another shulker box. The main ingredients being a bucket of water, a bucket of lava, some trapdoors, a couple of rail tracks, some hoppers, and a minecart. The last clue is a name tag with the name Get In. You have one last chance to type your answer while I gather some cobblestone, and off to the end we go to build a Ender, or Enderman based XP farm. Hit like if you got it right, and it will be $10 if you were wrong. I'll also accept payment in the form of a click on the subscribe button. To build the farm, first we need to get to y=0. Tricky to do when the dimension you're in is made of floating islands, suspended above the void. So to make a way down, first I placed a bucket of lava on the edge of the main island, and waited for it to pour out and reach all the way down. When it was ready, I placed the bucket of water down next to it, converting the lava into a pillar of cobblestone. With some careful swimming, I placed some leaf blocks at the bottom to stand on. Next, I built a long path out away from the end islands out of leaf block. The aim is to get far enough away from the end islands that the endermen are no longer spawning there, and therefore only spawn in my farm. There were some extra floating islands nearby, so I covered them in water to prevent any spawns on there, and the leaf blocks I have been using are not spawnable too. With the spawn proofing done, I built a small leafy platform with a square of hoppers in the middle. I put a roof on 2 blocks high to stop any endermen from leaving the killing area. I built the first couple of layers of the containment area up, and then placed water on the roof of the leaf block area to prevent any endermen from jumping up there too. As I built up the farm, I realised I would need some more blocks, so I made a quick trip back to the overworld, and whilst there, I made a quick makeshift ice farm on top of a nearby hill, since the new version of Minecraft means you can waterlog leaf blocks, and bucketing water on top of the leaves has been very tricky. It's a simple design, a square dugout and filled with water, with a diagonal row above the middle blocks. The diagonal blocks prevent the water directly underneath from freezing, so as you remove the ice, it can always fill back in. Back to the Enderman farm, I built it all the way up, and at the top, I set up a little box to trap an endermite, before throwing a bunch of ender pearls into the box to get one to spawn. As soon as he spawned, I name tagged him and got him into the minecart to hold him in place. I then carefully deconstructed the box so that he could sit in place, luring any Enderman nearby in close to him. To finish the farm, I extended out the top platform that has trapdoors around the inside of the open gap at the middle. With the farm finished, I went down to the bottom to test it out. What happens is Endermen can only spawn in the area near me at the top of the farm. Endermen also really hate Endermites and run at them to kill them. They run over the trapdoors and fall down about 40 blocks, taking lots of damage, so that one swing of a sword will kill multiple Endermen. They then drop some XP, which quickly goes to the player. This farm works so well because the Endermen keep spawning at the top and quickly take lots of damage, so the player just has to keep swinging to gather lots of XP fast. After expertly dispatching an angry mob of Endermen helplessly trapped in my XP farm, I took a moment to finish up the pathway leading to the farm. By extending the low roof and walls back along the path, I can prevent any Enderman in the farm from trying to find another spot to hide. And by using ice that I farmed during yesterday's video, I was able to quickly add water that flows over the roof to stop Endermen from hanging around up there too. Fun fact, a stack of ice essentially means you can carry 64 water sources in one spot of your inventory instead of one per bucket. Back to the overworld, I decided that it's time to start some dangerous doctoring work on some of the villagers. Because now I have access to unlimited XP levels, I'm going to need something to use them on. So I dug out a secret room in the hill behind the village and set up some rail tracks, with a gap in the wall and some powered rails dotted along to keep things moving. I then made some space in the actual village area to build a simple repeating structure, a bunch of holding cells where our villagers will soon find some permanent work. At night time, I sought out a special zombie, the kind that will actually pick up an item on the ground. I made him chase me over to a trapdoor where I tricked him into falling into my new secret lab. Thankfully, mobs won't actually walk over rail tracks, so now he's stuck here forever. I named him and gave him a shiny new sword. I captured my first villager to test out the system. I then went and quickly gathered the special items I'll be needing for my secret work. Some delicious golden apples and some freshly brewed splash potions of weakness. Now, the mechanism I'd set up was going to need some work, as I had to manually give the now zombie villager a push to move him into place. After giving the zombie villager the special items, it's time to wait. So I went to start deconstructing my old house when I got an advancement telling me that my experiment had worked. I moved the now cured villager into place, and when breaking his minecart, he teleported through the corner of the back. So I filled in the gaps at the back of the holding cells and fixed up the secret lab with a little ramp that will get the villagers perfectly in place, and then they will launch away at the push of a button, keeping me safe. Lastly, I added in a track switcher that will let me re-zombify and cure villagers as many times as I need in order to bring the prices of items they sell further and further down. With everything now set up, I can soon start mass-producing villagers with super cheap trades. After doing a little bit of villager conversion work, I realised that I need more gold bars to make some more golden apples. So I went to the Nether, as gold is fairly common there. It was taking a bit longer than I would like to, so I hatched a plan. I'm going to make a gold farm. So I used up the little bit of gold I'd managed to find so far on converting a few villagers, and while doing so, a couple of lovely creepers decided that now would be a good time to explode, right in the middle of everything, setting all of the villagers free from their holding cells. So I then took the time to upgrade the build of the holding cells a fair bit, adding a nice roof and a nice new smooth stone floor. After getting a few more librarians in, and getting them to have the book trades that I want, I started labelling them with signs above their heads, so I could quickly see what trades I have available. I then headed back into the Nether to start gathering some magma blocks, so I can start the gold farm build tomorrow.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe to keep up with my videos. Likes and comments tell the algorithm to show my videos to more people, so that's always a big help too.